In April 2003, the American-led coalition rained Tomahawk missiles down on the city of Baghdad, starting the war. The sheer volume of firepower deployed was meant to deliver an immediate, crushing blow to the Iraqi military apparatus. Thousands of tons of munitions leveled government buildings and military installations in a matter of days. The central government immediately disintegrated. As armored divisions rolled into the capital and bronze monuments to the regime were pulled to the ground, intelligence officials assumed the country's leader was either buried in the rubble or already in handcuffs. Instead, they found an empty chair. Despite deploying the largest military force on the planet, the highest-profile target in the Middle East had completely vanished. For 24 years, Saddam Hussein had maintained an iron grip over Iraq. In the 1980s, the United States actively supported his regime as a strategic counterbalance, but shifting geopolitical alliances eventually placed him squarely in Washington's crosshairs. The primary justification for Operation Iraqi Freedom hinged on the accusation that his government was actively stockpiling chemical and biological weapons, posing a direct, immediate threat to global security. Capturing him triggered one of the most expensive manhunts in history. The military poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the search, redirecting orbital surveillance satellites to scan the vast desert for any sign of his motorcade. To focus the ground effort, commanders distributed a specialized deck of playing cards to the troops, ranking the top regime officials. Saddam's face sat at the absolute top of the hierarchy, printed directly on the ace of spades. Securing that specific card became the overriding priority. Without him in custody, the coalition could not claim a definitive victory, and the entire rationale for the invasion remained highly vulnerable to international scrutiny. For 9 grueling months, the intelligence vacuum fueled a wild array of international theories. Global media outlets broadcast rumors that he had slipped across the border into Syria, or that Russian operatives had granted him secret asylum. Analysts dismissed the noise, focusing on his tribal roots. They tightened the search grid over to Crete, assuming a fugitive relies on blood loyalty. Interrogations and local chatter narrowed the perimeter further, pointing directly to Ad-Dawr, a farming settlement 15 kilometers away. On the night of December 13, 2003, Operation Red Dawn launched. 2 squads of helicopters descended on the rural coordinates, inserting over 600 heavily armed troops to lock down the entire sector. The billions spent on orbital satellite surveillance ultimately gave way to boots on the ground. Infantrymen spent hours digging through dark farmyards, checking basements, and scouring the dirt beneath rows of date palms. As afternoon approached the next day, a soldier clearing a seemingly empty courtyard spotted something unusual on the ground. A small, rectangular lid camouflaged with a layer of packed dirt and loose bricks. Prying it open revealed a concrete-lined shaft plummeting into the earth. This was the spider hole, a claustrophobic, reinforced bunker measuring just 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide, equipped with an air vent and a small exhaust fan. From the darkness of that narrow pit, a disheveled man with a thick, unkempt beard raised his hands. He looked up at the soldiers and announced in heavily accented English, "I am Saddam Hussein, and I am willing to negotiate." Investigators pulled him to the surface, securing the hole. Inside, they found 2 AK-47 rifles, a single pistol, and approximately $750,000 in neatly stacked U.S. currency, and not a single shot was fired. The autocrat, who had spent decades conducting state business from gold-plated palaces and marble throne rooms, had spent his final days of freedom hiding at the bottom of a dirt trench. The military manhunt had ended, but the legal reckoning was just beginning. Coalition forces immediately transferred the prisoner to a highly classified military detention center to prepare for a sprawling, multi-year tribunal. While his regime was accused of countless atrocities, the prosecution centered their final case on a single, thoroughly documented event. He was formally convicted of crimes against humanity for ordering the execution of 148 Shia Muslims in the village of Dujel in 1982. On November 5, 2006, the tribunal delivered its verdict. When the judge formally pronounced the sentence of death by hanging, the former president sat in silence, registering no outward emotion. The execution was rushed through in the early morning hours of December 30th, just before the start of the Islamic holiday of Eid al-Adha. Within hours, unauthorized mobile phone footage leaked online, showing witnesses openly taunting him as the noose was secured. The chaotic, highly sectarian nature of those final recorded minutes stripped away the veneer of absolute clinical justice that the occupying forces had spent 3 years trying to build, sparking immediate backlash across the Muslim world. Long after the execution, the core premise of the invasion continued to unravel. United Nations weapons inspectors and American search teams officially concluded that the massive stockpiles of weapons of mass destruction did not exist. The initial promises of swift liberation dissolved into the reality of a fractured nation. Millions of civilians were left to navigate a country with a shattered power grid, decimated infrastructure, and a violent power vacuum in the capital. This left international observers locked in a bitter debate. While nobody mourned the fall of a brutal dictator, historians and policy analysts continue to question whether the entire operation was driven by a genuine pursuit of human rights or a calculated mission of political vengeance. The military successfully captured their ace of spades, but removing that single card from the deck triggered a collapse that sent sectarian shockwaves across the Middle East, leaving the global community to pay the true price of the invasion for decades to come.